All right. Hello, Fortina's brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Ministry Revealed. It is May 20th, 2025, and I just saw I started at 7:14. How fitting. How fitting indeed. Those of you who have been around for a bit, you know exactly what that means. Well, I got to say when my wife came home today, I was a little bit fired up. I'm excited about this teaching, but I was just fired up about things going on around the world in general. You know, I spend most of my days studying, and not just the scriptures, but overall and the seasons and times. And man, it's easy to get riled up, man. Understanding and understanding more of world positions and countries and the tariffs and just all sorts of things, you know, with AI. And you've heard me talk numerous times about the fourth turning book and others like it, revealing the season and time that we're in literally right now. You know, it's why with the scriptures in particular, why we have such a focus on this year with everything they've revealed over these 7.5 years. And so I had to take about 20 minutes before starting the teaching, because after having that conversation with my wife, I was just I was a little bit on edge and fired up. So I'm sure it'll leak out a little bit in here, in the excitement and in how I usually share. But I guess it's just part of my nature. I love what the word tells us. I love how the Lord reveals it, how His Spirit leads us, and how blessed we've been to receive all of these mysteries and the understanding that we've received. You know, and as we get into tonight's teaching, I know not everyone is in agreement with these last two teachings. The vast majority of people are, and today's teaching is going to be a little bit of a summary with these last two, but the real focus, even though we're going to go into these two again a little bit, it's to add more details, to show more pieces that seem to point at the exact same thing that were talked about in the last two teachings. But the real focus on this one is going to be the connection to tabernacles. So you'll see in the title something along days to years, confirm it, or something along details it, or something along those lines. And that's what we're going to see. You know, we've talked about these things in the past in relation to days being like years. And we're going to go into a very specific piece of scripture that you guys know very well, a very specific chapter. And I think we're all in agreement on that chapter. I don't think there's any reason for us to be against each other or have contradiction in it. We've shared it numerous times. We know it's an exact picture of the 7 years of seals and the 7 years of trumpets to the final Jubilee. We've talked about it, but today we're going to bring them into detail. And with the help of our lovely sister Tammy, who makes our wonderful charts, most of our wonderful charts, she made these charts for us that we're going to go through today. Once we get there. So, you know, I understand why there are some people that aren't in full agreement with what was shown and what was revealed in the last two teachings. But if if you really consider the things that have been revealed and how they've come about over the years, if you've been around for a long time, you know, it comes about, it's a shock to the system. You could see it, you're not too sure. There's maybe a hole to poke here or a hole to poke there. But as it continues to reveal itself and complete the picture over time, it always makes it clear. You know, I always like to use the example of the mountain of the Lord. You know, when he's coming with paradise at the end of 6 years of seals. You know, it seemed like a crazy thing back then when it first came about, and it was like my most drastic video back then, even after the incredible revelations of the Gospels and the years. And I was freaking out over that one. But I knew I understood it. I knew I understood it because how it came to be revealed and as I sought it out. Well, I feel the exact same thing about these. I understand how it came about. I understand that it began with the word in. I was confused like everybody else in accepting the narrative we've been taught. But to do that, as we shared in the last two teachings, would be to leave the gospel of Luke, Mark, Matthew out as a discrepancy. You see, we know there's no discrepancies. That's what this ministry reveals, is the revelation, the prophetic of these discrepancies. They're not discrepancies, they're prophecy. And that's what we kind of showed in the last two, but this one is really going to put it in your face in detail with these charts so that you'll be able to see it and understand it to yourself, and a couple more points pointing right to the same storyline again. So I understand some believe, by using the Hebrew calendar, which I'm sticking with, some believe we're probably on the wrong calendar. Others believe like I just said, we should maybe use John instead of the Synoptic Gospels. Others believe that the Sabbaths are wrong, and so that where these things land should actually be on other days. And that pretty much covers the gamut of where people are that aren't fully, they're understanding it, they're generally in agreement, but there's still some differences that others see. And I'm not against it. I have just, with all of the studying that I've done, with the digging that I've done, not discrediting what others have dug, this is the absolute best combination of all of the Gospels with the law, with the timeline from the crucifixion, from the Passover to the crucifixion, with the amount of time and people Jesus went to see and was brought to before the time of the crucifixion, and then to the resurrection. It makes a lot more sense. It aligns with all the Gospels in relation to not only sticking with John, but Luke, Mark, Matthew, which we'll briefly touch on again, and with what the law told us. So with that, I want you guys to know, I'm not dismissing, I'm not saying it's necessarily all perfect yet, but it is vastly more in order and understood than we have ever had it before. And I can only expect, as with all of the other revelations that have come to reveal understanding, not only through the prophecies of the end of days, but that brought clarity to the is and the was. It has done it every single time. And I believe that's more of what you're going to see tonight. That showing the is to come of the days as years, of the Passover week of unleavened bread to the Feast of Tabernacles, is going to prove what we've understood in the day counts of the events that took place during Passover, and then we're going to take that and follow it through into Tabernacles in the days to years, and we'll see how these days line up to the years, and then hopefully the more people can make their decision based on this and have the clarity as I have come to see and understand it, and as I know the majority of you have as well. So I believe once again today it will be no different than it was with every other teaching. It gets clearer and clearer and clearer, and the end of days and the revelation of the prophecies of the end of days reveal these things to us in the clarity of the days that they took place. All right? So hopefully with that, we've got it laid out. We get it. We understand it. And now we'll just get digging into it. Another piece when we get there, how I talked about with the week of Passover, of unleavened bread. It's 7 days long. Within 7 days, there has to be a Passover somewhere. Okay? And we shared where it was and what it was connected to in relation to Scripture. Well, when we get to Tabernacles, we're going to look at the same thing, and we have to understand, well, it's 7 days and then the 8th day, new beginning. So where is the Passover? Where is the Sabbath within those 7 days? It has to be in there somewhere. So what does prophecy in the years reveal to us about the days? Okay? That's what you're going to see. And both of them tell us the same story in relation to the years based on their days. It's a big deal, and I think it's very important because it clarifies and confirms so much more for us. Okay? If you're new to the ministry, as I always like to get into, you can either go to ministryrevealed.com or you can go to the playlist right here, and click on this intro series right here. When you click on this intro series, it will bring you to this first video right here. Let me make sure I paused it with my mouth wide open. With this intro series right here, there's 15 teachings in here, but the key that I always talk about are these first 4. This 22-minute intro, this one right here, is a little detail, a little glimpse to warm you up for what you're going to understand in the next 3. The second one is things that you've just heard me talk about. They're the discrepancies that people call within the differences of the Gospels. We've revealed here that the discrepancies aren't discrepancies at all. They're actually prophecy, and we have proven it out dozens and dozens and dozens of places all throughout the Gospels within their differences. It's absolutely mind-blowing. And one example I usually give is if you go to the synoptic Gospels of Luke, Mark, Matthew, the first will be last, the last will be first. So Matthew, Mark, Luke, in the end becomes Luke, Mark, Matthew. You'll see that Jesus, as he's going to the cross, is arrayed in a gorgeous robe. It means white, radiant, beautiful, kind of like a bride. In Mark, he's arrayed in purple, and in Matthew, he's arrayed in scarlet. Were they colorblind? No. What's the point of the story? Well, the pre-trib bride is connected to Luke. The pre-trib is the Luke, the Gentile bride of Christ. And when you see purple and scarlet, those are the same colors of the beast of Revelation. That's because Mark's group representing the world, the Gentiles grafted into the house of Israel, they're going to be here during seals. That's the 7 years of seals. And then you've got scarlet, and then you've got the time of Jacob's trouble, these 7 years of trumpet judgments. And at first, that already sounds crazy that I'm talking about a portion of 14 years and a short portion called above, where the pre-trib takes place. Well, that's when you're going to get into this one. You'll start with a 30-minute Bible study. That's what this is, all from the Word, showing you what these differences reveal in the prophetic. And then you're going to come to the third teaching, which is another 30-minute intro Bible study. We've got 3-hour teachings, more than one, on these 2 teachings right here. And this one will reveal to you that the end of days is not 7 years, but 14 years, 7 years of trumpets, 7 years of seals, and a short portion called the above. Matthew, Mark, Luke, in the end becomes Luke, Mark, Matthew. And what it reveals is that pre, mid, and post are all true. And that's why people can go to the different epistles and different gospels and wonder and debate and go back and forth about whether pre, mid, or post are all true. Which one they believe? Well, the answer is all 3 are true once you understand the differences of who the synoptic gospels are speaking to. And then you say, well, how on earth did we not know it was 14 years? How come we've all believed it was only 7? Because everybody was taught through the eyes of Matthew. In this 4th teaching, about almost 2 hours and 45 minutes, it's a big one, but it is worth every moment. It's all because of Matthew is the answer to that question. Because everybody has foundationally been taught the Gospels from the viewpoint of Matthew's Gospel. And they go rarely to Mark and even less to Luke. And so what happens is every time they look at prophecy, they look at it through the lens of Matthew, and that lens is 7 years, but that lens is the 7 years of trumpets. This is why they mix and match the Antichrist with Satan, or the beast with Satan. They haven't understood that there are 3 beings: Satan, the false prophet, and the beast or Antichrist. There are 3 of them. And when you see how it works out, when you see how it plays out throughout the discourses and why there's differences, you will begin to understand the reason everybody has believed 7 years and argued over pre, mid, and post and all of these things is because they all look through the lens of Matthew. Once you begin to understand the differences as to why we have 3 synoptic gospels telling us the same stories yet differently with different times and different words, it will all start to open. And it will blow your mind as it has everybody else here who has taken the time to understand it. So with that, that's what I always recommend. Again, you could also go to ministryrevealed.com right here. And when you do, just click on the menu and go to intro. If you would like to support the ministry, don't forget, we also support our brothers and sisters over in Uganda. a ministry that's been growing by leaps and bounds with a team out there, reaching tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. And we're trying to get them Bibles, 2 different books, as you know, the Ministry Revealed for Prophecy and the Salvation one with Cindy's book. So you can also click right here or go in the description box under the videos, and we've got a PayPal link right here. All right, we've also got our address there if need be. So with that, let's start having some fun. Let's start with the Hebrew alphabet. Now, the reason I'm showing you the Hebrew alphabet today, excuse me, is because of something our brother Roy had sent me in a message. He had said something, and I don't remember now the specific details. I'm sorry, brother, but I know it was connected to, when I say that, I mean, I don't remember exactly the wording he used, but I'm going to show you what he meant. And what it was we know the Hebrew alphabet is 22 letters. We know that the big picture of the end of days of prophecy is 22 years. They're the 7 easy years, and then he gets Leah expecting Rachel. They flew by like days. Then you've got the 7 years of seals, the 7 years of trumpets. That's when he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel. And then he worked 6 more years for the cattle, and he made a covenant with his father-in-law after 20 years. And that's when the Lord returns, feet down on the Mount of Olives, after the big picture 21 years, or at the end of 13 to start the 14th year, returns feet down. It's going to be as it was in the days of Noah, confirming the covenant, destroying all of the enemies, and then it'll be the final Jubilee, which in the big picture is the 22nd year. In the end of days picture is the 15th year. And what are both of these a portion of? Well, the 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7. Okay? The 49 years to the 50th year Jubilee. It's just these are the tribulation years, and this is the Spirit-filled leading people, preparing the people for this time about to take place. So we've understood this for years now, the big picture. And this big picture, as you all have understood if you've been around for a while, you could see that in the intro series. I think it's the last teaching, and it's the last teaching on the intro series on the website as well, where it's called It's All a Fractal. We have the year count wrong. Okay, so when we talk about 70 years, over the years, as you watch older teachings, we've been trying to track down where the 70 years is. And I believe we finally got it. It's like this chart here. I have to redo this chart. I haven't redone it yet because we've been working on all of these other charts and also in preparing for teachings. But now that those are coming to an end, I'll update all of these charts. Just because the years count change, it changes nothing in relation to what happens during the time of prophecy when it starts. So in that teaching, It's All a Fractal, it shows that from the beginning of creation to the end of the millennial reign will be 21,000 years since in the beginning, and it's going to end at 22. Okay? The eternity after the millennial reign will be the 22nd thousandth year. That will be the new beginning, the eternity of everything. Okay? At the end of the millennial reign. It's also the picture of the end of days. We know there were 7 easy years. You got the 7 years of seals, 7 years of trumpets, and the 22nd year in the big picture is going to be the final Jubilee, and in this case would be the beginning of the millennial reign from that final Jubilee in relation to years. What we're going to talk about tonight is then how these years of 7 of seals, 7 of trumpets to the 15th is the same picture as the big picture in the thousands, as the big picture of the years, as it is to the years of seals and trumpets, to the days of unleavened bread, to the days of tabernacles. But why am I showing you the Hebrew calendar? Because it starts with 1. Why am I showing you the Hebrew alphabet? Because just as the revelation of the end of days in the big picture tells us in Scripture, it begins with in the beginning, like the beginning of creation, and it ends with 22, the end. What's the Hebrew alphabet? It just so happens that the Hebrew alphabet is 22 letters long, And the first one is Aleph, which is the head of the ox, which is the constellation of Taurus. It represents the Lord, the beginning, right? The Lord himself is called what? The Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. In Hebrew, he's the Aleph and the Tav. Well, what do we know about this in Genesis 1? In the beginning. What is this word beginning? We know that this word beginning is Christ. It's literally Jesus. Jesus is the beginning. Okay? In the beginning, meaning in Christ, God the Father created heaven and earth. Hello. John chapter 1 confirms all of these things. And when Jesus was then made light, you see, and God said, let there be light. God the Father then had Jesus be made light. Excuse me. And we see that again in John 1. But this was from in the beginning. Who's the beginning? Well, Jesus Christ is the beginning. Right? Jesus is the beginning. He is the Aleph. He is the beginning. Well, what else is he? He's the end. He's the Tav. What is the Tav? It's a cross. It's a cross. He's the beginning and he's the end. Watch this. This is pretty cool. When the Lord God told Moses, this is the beginning of your years and the beginning of your months, what did he tell him? He told him right here. He told him Nisan 1 or month 1, right? And in Moses' day, where was the first month of the year? It was in Taurus. Right? We've showed that the history of that Taurus was the beginning when the Lord God told Moses, this is the beginning of your months and the beginnings of your years. It was Taurus. And the beginning is who? The beginning is Christ. It was Taurus in the beginning. So who is it? Christ. Christ was the beginning. Okay, and this goes all the way back. It's the same picture in the big picture of all of creations, back to in the beginning being Christ, being Taurus. Well, let me ask you something. What is the cross? When Christ died on the cross, he of course he took our sins away. But had he not resurrected, would it have meant anything? You see? Would he have really been who he said he was if he had not resurrected? You needed the resurrection, right? So he's what? He's the beginning and the end, the Taurus and the cross. And when did the cross end? At his resurrection, right? It's the 22nd letter of the alphabet. Crucified, in the grave, resurrected on the first day of the week. Meaning, this is the Sabbath, and this is from an evening to evening, the first day of the week, or from a day to day, the first day of the week. How can we know? Well, it's the 22nd day. It's the 22nd day. It's been in front of our eyes the entire time. What's the 22nd day? It's the new beginning. It's the Jubilee. What do we call it in trumpets? 7 and the 8th day. What's the 8th day called? We'll talk about it later, but it's called the new beginning. So if it's the new beginning, and in the big picture, the end of the millennial reign and the new beginning of everything, how is the 15th or the 22nd and so forth, or the 8th, 15th, 22nd, how are those the Sabbath? It's been in front of my eyes on our chart for years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How on earth was I saying the 8th and the 15th were the Sabbaths and the 22nd and the 15th and the 29th were the Sabbaths. If days are years and years are days in the prophetic, that's an issue, isn't it? It's clear it's 7, 14, 21. And as you guys know, it goes from here to here, goes from here to here, goes from here to here. And what did I explain in the last teaching? That I have believed that they reset at every month. That the Sabbaths reset at every month. Okay? And I'm going to give you more evidence for that tonight when we get into Tabernacles. You just saw a glimpse of it there a moment ago. So you see what I'm saying? You see how it's all in everything? Another little glimpse of Nisan 1 or month 1, day 1, and him being the cross and the resurrection from the cross when everything was done at the resurrection from the cross being the 22nd. What did we show in the last teachings? The 22nd, early in the morning, first day of the week was Resurrection Day. Another little glimpse by simply understanding the 22. From 1 to 22. Is this something I just made up? No. We've had it in our charts for years. We've showed and talked about the Hebrew alphabet numerous times over the years. And want to know what's interesting about it? It just reminded me years ago, I had contemplated in talking about many things with the Hebrew alphabet, I had contemplated many times why the cross was 22. It didn't make sense to me. Because he's the beginning, the end, he's the Taurus and the cross. We had understood Taurus now for a long time, for a few years now, but it still never made sense why the cross was 22. I think it does now, doesn't it? He's the beginning and the end. His resurrection sealed the deal. It was done. That's why. Now, here's the next thing. You guys will remember this. We've talked about this. I just talked about it a moment ago. This whole thing of days as years and years as days is not something made up. It's been understood in the realm of prophecy with Scripture for centuries. Now, when it started here with this ministry, I didn't know it right away, right? These things revealed themselves, and then we go look them up, and these things in relation to day-year principles for prophecy in year days, they'd been around for centuries. Well, that's exactly what we keep talking about. These pictures of years, of the 7 years of seals, 7 years of trumpets, and the final Jubilee, we've talked for a long time, this picture over the last 2-3 years, this picture of Deuteronomy 16 with unleavened bread and tabernacles. And now it's becoming even more clear. What about this? This one we shared in the last one, so this is just for a little reminder that sunrise to sunrise is a regular day in Scripture, but Sabbaths and feast days are observed from sunset to sunset. That's why our charts really help this out a little bit more by having two different sides. So what did we show? At Abib, at the crescent of the moon, it's declared at sunset. But day 1 begins at sunrise, and it's sunrise to sunrise is day 1. But the declaration comes on the evening of the day before with the crescent moon. So when you're counting in relation to Sabbaths and feast days, it's like you're counting the half day before the start of the month. So there's your evening to evening, day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is your Sabbath day. You do it again. This is your second Sabbath of the year. This is your third Sabbath of the year, and so on. Okay? Very interesting and straightforward, in my opinion, as we've really delved deeper into this, Because these exact same things are revealed to us in the chapters to years, in the years to days of the end of days that we've been talking about for years. Like I just said a moment ago. I mean, there's the Sabbath. There's the Sabbath. There's the Sabbath. Why was I thinking it was the 8th, 15th, 22nd? When every single time the 8th day represents new beginning, right? The first day of the next week. It's craziness. It's funny how something just, once you see it and once it opens up, you just shake your head and you're like, what the heck was going on there? See, it's part of this process, and as the Lord brings more clarity and the Spirit's leading, it starts to all make more sense. And it doesn't just make more sense to this, it clarifies many, many more aspects of it. So this, as we shared in the last one, we've understood this now. So when we come to Deuteronomy 16, as mentioned a moment ago, I think it's safe to say that anybody who's been around, at least for a little while or several years, we are all on the same page, as far as I know, that we are all on the same page of what Deuteronomy 16 reveals. It is unequivocally the revelation of the end of days in the 7 days of Passover unleavened bread and the 7 days of Tabernacles to the 8th day. We've shown this and talked about it in a surface way many times, but only one-dimensionally, meaning only by looking at a single year count and not having a sowing and reaping Tishri year count and a Nisan year count. Okay, we've talked in the last one a little bit more about this one, so we're only going to touch a little bit on it and then go more so into this one and see what it shows us. But we're, of course, going to do it on our new chart that's been put together, but the same chart, if you know what I mean. Okay, it's going to be this chart that we have with our Sabbath Tishri to our start of year 1 to Nisan over this year, starting over here, and how it goes 6 months offset back and forth. Okay, this calendar, this calendar, this revelation was a massive game changer for us in the revelation of the end of days. We've talked about it. We used to always go as a one-dimensional view and realize that some things just weren't lining up. And since the last several months, since last fall, so many of these details have opened up where it's not just one-dimensional, but there's a 6-month offset for the other year that goes all the way through. One being a Nisan year, one being a sowing and reaping year from the fall in Tishri. Okay? But when we've talked about Deuteronomy 16, it was still very clear in the one-dimensional view that you have the 7 days of unleavened bread. And what did it say about unleavened bread? It just so happened, like we shared in the last one, it just so happens, it says it'll be 6 days, and the 7th would be a solemn assembly in Deuteronomy 16. Well, that's the exact same wording that we get for the Sabbath. 6 days shall you work, and the 7th will be your Sabbath of rest. Unleavened bread, 6 days of unleavened bread, and the 7th is a solemn assembly. Do you know you don't get that wording in the 7 days as years or in the 7 days of Tabernacles? It only happens in the unleavened bread of the Passover week. So this was also another big obvious clue in the wording of Deuteronomy when it told us, where is it? When it told us in Deuteronomy 16 verse 8, 6 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day shall be a solemn assembly. To the Lord thy God thou shalt do no work therein. It's the same layout as a Sabbath. 6 days work, seventh is Sabbath. Which means what? Which means if we've understood the Sabbaths, there's the Sabbath from the 13th to the 14th. There's the first day of unleavened bread. Remember, Sabbaths and feasts go from evening to evening. This is your Passover. From sunset, the lamb is brought in to be killed and prepared, and they eat the lamb that night, and by morning, it has to be gone. It has to be burnt for whatever's not eaten. But all of this is the first day portion. There's the evening. This is the first day portion of unleavened bread. So what do you get? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. What did it say? 6 days, and then what? The seventh day is going to be a solemn assembly. And you shall do no servile work therein. And the picture it lays out is 6 days and the seventh rest, exactly like it tells us for a Sabbath. And it's the only feast that it tells us this. So, what did we understand? If this is a Sabbath, and this is laid out like a Sabbath, and it's told to us the same way as a Sabbath is, and it lines up with the 20th to the 21st, which is a Sabbath, then it completely lines up with what Scripture told us in relation to the time of Christ with the timing of the crucifixion. Because this is the only Sabbath that happens in the week of unleavened bread. Okay? We'll touch on that again in a moment. But that's what becomes very clear. So, again, when we're in Deuteronomy chapter 16, we have understood these things. We have understood that the 6 days, we have understood that these 6 days, 6 days of unleavened bread, and then the seventh are the 6 years of seals, and then the seventh year of seals. When we go to Tabernacles, what did we see about Tabernacles? 7 days of Tabernacles, and then it has an 8th day. So there is no break on the 7th day. It goes, where is it? It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days of Tabernacles. And when we get to this later on, we're going to see what all of this tells us, what's taking place within these 7 and 8 days. And we're going to see if these days reveal more insight for us into the years, or if the years of the end of days will help bring clarity to the events of the days that take place in understanding Tabernacles better. Because what ends up happening? It's 7, 8 days long. So as I said earlier, well, where would the Sabbath be? The weekly Sabbath has to be somewhere in here. Can we understand it by the revelation of days to years and years to days? Yes, we can, and I'm going to show it to you. Okay, we're going to get into that. I also want to remind you that I'm using the year 2023 again, and the only reason I'm doing it is, as I said last time, is to avoid any confusion when people go and they're watching this and thinking that I'm talking about it for this year or next year or, that type of thing. I'm showing it with an old calendar because it doesn't matter what calendar you use. It's to show you the understanding of what unleavened bread, the week of Passover, reveals to the end of days, and what the feast of Tabernacles and its 7th to the 8th day reveal about the end of days, and how both give us clarity from the years into the events of the days. Okay? So don't get caught up in relation to it being 2023. So now Now, again, with Deuteronomy 16, we've seen this and understood it and shared it on this a number of times over the last several years, but we've never gone into the details, the deeper details in a detailed chart for both the Feast of Unleavened Bread and the Feast of Tabernacles. Okay? Yes, we touched on the last one with Unleavened Bread, but we're going to touch on it a bit more because now the chart is ready and it's easy to track for you, all of you guys, okay? So that's what we're going to go into. We're going to start with the Unleavened Bread or Passover week, and then we're going to go into the Tabernacles week and the 8th day. So we're already starting to see glimpse confirming these things that we have shared and have understood. Now, we're going to go have a look at something real quick. Again, this was a share that came in the forum. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, if you're new, you can go to ministryrevealed.com. And I think actually I put links under videos too in the description box. You can click on the forum link or go to ministryrevealed.com, click forum, and join about 1,400 people from around the world, like-minded brothers and sisters, diligently seeking and sharing and prayers and Bible studies and all sorts of things going on in there. News and events globally. You can join us. It takes 5-10 seconds to sign up, and it's free. Well, there was something shared about the SOP, and I don't know if it was a private message to me or if it was public. I can't recall now. I'm looking at so many different messages. But we talked about this word SOP, right? This word SOP in John chapter 13 excuse me, is used only 4 times. And all 4 times that it's used right there in John's gospel, excuse me, in chapter 13. But that word for SOP comes to another word which is only used 1 time. Okay? This word for SOP, let me go to it. Let's go to John chapter 13. And I thought this was very interesting. Am I saying, oh, this is the absolute proof. This is what says this is what it is. No, I believe it's just dropping another little hint for us. Okay? Let's just read what it says. 4 times the word SOP is used. It's used all 4 times in this scripture right here. But it comes from 55:97, and it's used 1 time. Kernels in the fingers, a husk, okay? This one place it's used is in Luke, G5997. It's used in Luke chapter 6, verse 1. Now, I think most of you are going to understand why I thought this was interesting. Listen to what it says. Luke 6, verse 1. And it came to pass on the 2nd Sabbath after the 1st that he went through the cornfields and his disciples and plucked the ears of corn, and they did eat. Excuse me. Rubbing, there's that word. 55:97. So a defining root word for the word SOP, which means like to rub out, to rub out through your hands, to break off a piece, for the word SOP, comes from a root word used 1 time in Luke chapter 6, verse 1. And in the conversation, it tells us that this happened on the 2nd Sabbath after the 1st. Are you guys getting what I'm saying? Are some of you guys, ding, 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 are you getting it? Do you know why? Remember John 13:1. John 13 does not take place at the Passover. It's before the Feast of Passover. This takes place the day before Passover. Okay? The day before Passover. And we see, as we shared in the last one, that Satan, at the end of this supper, the devil puts into the heart of Judas. And this supper is taking place at Passover. And so during at the day before Passover, so at this after dinner, in this evening of the day before Passover, Jesus tells us the story about the sop, that when he dips this piece rubbed in, like a rubbed off piece, and dips it in, whoever he gives it to is the one who's going to betray him. And then we saw in Luke 13:27 that then Satan entered him after he received the sop. Now, we shared in the last couple teachings how from this, most pastors, if not all, believe it's the same story, just told a little differently in Luke, Mark, Matthew, when it's not. It's completely different. Watch what happens. When we go to Luke chapter 22, watch this. This is really exciting. Like I said, another little clue. Now look what happens. Then Satan entered Judas. So we saw Satan didn't enter Judas until after he received the sop. So now this is after Satan had received the sop, the time of the next day. And look what's come now. Now it's the time of unleavened bread, when the Passover must be killed, which is what? The time of unleavened bread, when the Passover must be killed. When does the Passover get killed? On the evening of the 14th. Okay? Remember that? We saw that numerous times over the years, right? In over recent days. Leviticus chapter, where is it? Leviticus 23, in. This powerful word in the 14th day of the first month at even. What is in the 14th day? That's the other one. What is in the 14th day? The only way you could be in the 14th day and not just on or the 14th day is if it started at sunrise, like a day starts. And in, he then tells us, is what? Not just in, but that it's at evening. Okay? At the 14th day, in the 14th day, at even, as the sun's going down. This is when it's time to sacrifice the lamb. And then what happens? Well, it's also called, because it's now what? It's a feast day, right? It's the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The first day, the 15th day of unleavened bread, goes from the evening of the 14th to the evening of the 15th, like we shared. It becomes so crystal clear, doesn't it? But what does he say? It's killed, they have to eat it in that evening, and it all has to be burnt, and nothing can be left by the morning. So it's only the evening of the 15th to represent when he took them out of Egypt, and everything took place in the evening. Hello. But now watch what happens. Luke 22 has just told us that after Judas was entered by Satan, then came the day of unleavened bread. So what does that mean? That means, just as we said, John chapter 13 is the day before. They're having the meal on this day. What day is this? This is the day that Judas eats the sop. Because remember, Luke's? They still didn't realize by the next day at Passover that it was Judas. When Jesus was telling them the story and giving them the sop, they still didn't clue in that it was Judas. That when the Lord was doing it and saying it, they still didn't get it. And what did we see? That he goes on to tell them, where is it? That they go on to say among themselves, right? Where is it? When when they start all asking individually, is it me, Lord? Is it me? Is it me? Is it me? And we find out, I always mix where I had it on here. Let's go over here. Luke, oh, I'm already here, good. Luke 22, when he says somebody's going to betray him, and we see the storyline. Why do I keep missing it? I keep thinking it's much further down. Desire to eat before, and eat the kingdom of God. Oh, that's right. Because the rest of the story gets more clear in Mark 14. So we know that it was the time to kill, right? Satan's entered him. It was the first day of unleavened bread when they kill the Passover. You see, that's that evening portion. He sends them to go and prepare it. Jesus comes in the evening of the 14th, which is the start of the 15th, from evening to evening. And what happens? He says one of them is going to betray him. And they all start asking one by one, is it me? Is it me? And what does Jesus answer in 14:20? And he answered and said unto them, it is one of the 12 that dippeth with me in the dish. Remember, that's not what he said in John chapter 13. So what do we know? If John chapter 13 took place when the sop was dipped and he gave it to Judas and Judas enters him, it happened sometime right here in this evening, because this next day right here, from evening to evening, right here is the time of the Passover lamb when it's sacrificed, and Jesus came in the evening right here to eat it. And then what did he tell them? He told them again, but this time it wasn't who he gave the sop to, it was whoever dips in the bowl with him. But Satan had already indwelt them before Passover. So when do we know it took place? Right here, the 13th to the 14th, which is what? The Sabbath. So from the beginning of the month, this is what? Sabbath 1. What is this? The second Sabbath, right? So this is the second Sabbath after the first. This is the second Sabbath from the start of the year. And what did we just show the word sop came from? The word sop has a root word in Luke chapter 6, verse 1, which is connected to the word rubbing in relation to rubbing off a piece of bread for when he dipped the sop in, because it's the root word. It's one of the root words from the only 4 places where sop is used. And look at what the connection says. The second Sabbath after the first. We just showed and we were teaching that this right here was the Sabbath meal that they were having in John 13, and the sop was given right here to Judas when Satan enters him. And the only place the word sop is used is right here to John 13 in 4 places. And the root word of it goes to Luke 6, verse 1, which comes from the breakdown of like rubbing, like to rub off, breaking off a piece of bread that he would have dipped the sop in. And the place where it's found, it says it was the second Sabbath after the first. Remember I said it wasn't going to be everything pinpointing and saying, see, this is absolutely it. But is it another connection? Of course it is. This is the second Sabbath after the first. This is the first Sabbath of the year. This is the second Sabbath of the year. It's the second Sabbath after the first, and it's the exact same day connected to when the sop was given and Judas entered him, which is the sop referencing the word rubbing. That is pretty cool. It's in the exact same place where we had show it based on Luke chapter 13, John chapter 13. And that's why it's so important when we understand that. And then you realize that this wasn't Passover, but that Passover begins on the evening of the 14th. And the evening of the 14th is also the beginning of the first day of unleavened bread. And in Luke, Mark, Matthew, he's eating the Passover meal. So clearly he couldn't have been taken yet. And this is where the story goes, where many people, I had somebody share with me also that they were speaking to their father and shared with their father and said, you know, that they had just recently understood from these revelations that Christ wasn't actually crucified at this time. And the father's answer was along the same lines that many people, I've come to find out, have shared the same thing, have said, well, I have often wondered how on earth Jesus could have been taken late in this evening and like 6-8 hours later was crucified after being brought from one place to another place to another place, back to the other guy before the crowd of people, then crucified? It didn't really make sense. Well, now we know. You see, it's that mystery of this time frame of things that take place. It ties into things with prophecy. Because what do we say with prophecy? The same things, right? Many people have said over the centuries, how can all of these things fit into 7 years? How can all of these things we read about in relation to end of days things happen in a 7-year time frame? Well, now we know they don't. We've known now for a long time. They happen over 14 years and a little piece above. You see? It's awesome. It's really wild stuff when you can understand this. It's right in front of us and so beautifully detailed that the clarity just it's just like you're buffing it and it's getting shinier, more clear and more clear and more clear. That's what's happening. You see, it's the same thing now if we go to this right here. So this is our same calendars, the two sides, the Tishri side from sowing and reaping from the fall, from fall to fall to fall to fall, and Nisan being from spring to spring to spring to spring. Okay? I have little notes here, as I shared in the last one, that Nisan to Nisan is like the days in a calendar year that go from sunrise to sunrise, right? Spring, the sun longer, from spring to spring, from sunrise to sunrise, like the days when we look at the days of the month and the year. When you come from Tishri to Tishri, right here, they're like the Sabbath days and feast days that go from sunset to sunset, from fall to fall, from the time of darkness to darkness. That's what the feast days line up with and what we're talking about when I go through this. What is the Sabbath? It goes from evening to evening. And then you're at the feast day, it goes from evening to evening. There's your 7 days of unleavened bread. But when we're talking about days of the year, they pronounce the new month starting at the crescent with Abib, but the day begins the first day of the month from sunrise to sunrise. This is like the Nisan to Nisan, and this is like a Tishri to Tishri. And you'll notice what comes first every time. You see? Tishri, like a evening to evening, a Tishri to Tishri, starts before a sunrise to sunrise. Lo and behold, that's what our chart has revealed as well. So here's some of the things that we've talked about. Well, let me explain to you some of the chart on both sides. So from the 70th year, so this would be the year that we're in right now. Okay? I guess it doesn't work that way. So we believe after all of the revelation that we're in the 70th year. The 70th year in relation to the calendar for unleavened bread, okay, is as if we're right here. Okay? We're right here. This right here is the 70th year, okay, that we're in right here. So I've got it as 14th from day. Why day? Because Nisan to Nisan covers the days. Okay? We see that year one is going to begin on the 15th. And when we come over here, look at what we've got. Year one starts on the evening to evening. And what is it? It's the 15th day from the evening to evening, which is Tishri to Tishri. So what do we see? Then the evening to evening, from Tishri to Tishri, evening to evening, right? Where do we see it right here? From the midst right here to the midst right here. So it's going to go from an evening right here to an evening right here. See that? Just follow the red line across because they're offset by 6 months, and it begins with evening. So what are we expecting to see? Well, you remember on the other chart, we're expecting this potential of the literal Revelation 12 event to take place in the Tishri of 2025. Okay, so now things will be started, right? Well, what else happens in that day? What happens in the first day of unleavened bread? Leviticus 23 verse 7, it says, in the first day you will have a holy convocation and no work. Well, lo and behold, what happens? What's the typology we've got right here approximately around Nisan is what? Is the picture of the pre-trib, as we shared in the last one, to the holy convocation, which means those bidden, guests invited. This pre-trib connected to being in the first day of unleavened bread in a Tishri to Tishri. So in the midst of it, as we shared, and what do we have? We have a pre-trib. You see? You can see over here, we've got Leviticus 23:5 that we covered earlier, in the 14th day at evening. So here's the 14th day we just showed, right? 14th day goes from here to here, Nisan to Nisan, this 70th year. And in it, right here, in the day portion, or sorry, in the evening portion, see, there's the evening. We bring it across. There's the evening. Right here, in the time of fall, starts your typology of the evening Passover sacrifice. Okay? And it's connected to what? The pre-trib. It's connected in this timing to the pre-trib. And it's in the first day of unleavened bread, which is a holy convocation and no work. We also see the same thing. What do we know from Exodus chapter 12, verse 16? In the first day, holy convocation, no work, but what else does it say? You'll do, and no work except with that which all must eat. So in the first day, it's a holy convocation, no servile work, but there's a feast of the Lord that they must eat in this first day. Okay? So this is what we're seeing here, is the 7 days of unleavened bread, right, to the 8th day, which is the first year of the beginning, right, the new beginning, or to Tabernacles. So we're seeing the first day of unleavened bread as we're seeing it right here. It's being revealed in the time of the end. And then you've got the 2nd day, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th day. And we have what? The 7 days of unleavened bread to the 7 years of seals, which we talked about earlier, right? And we see in Exodus chapter 12, verse 18, the 14th day at evening. There's the 14th day, evening, which is this portion right here, the beginning of the sacrificing of the lamb. They eat it in the evening, and nothing can be left by sunrise. You see, nothing can be left by sunrise on the 15th day when it starts. And what does it say? At evening until the 21st day at evening shall you eat unleavened bread. Well, look at where unleavened bread ends. The 7 days as 7 years ends at the end of the 7th one. And what does it say? It says in the 7th day, and here you are, in that that's for right here, in the 7th day. I'm talking about this one right here, sorry. And it'll go until the evening of the 21st day. Well, here's the 21st day, and it goes until what? Till evening, which is Tishri the fall. So you've got 7 days from right here as 7 years to right here, and they're all unleavened bread. And we just saw that 6 of them are unleavened bread, right? And then the 7th would be what? A Sabbath of rest, like a holy convocation. And what did we show in previous teachings? In the previous teachings. And what we just talked about earlier. How do we know that this is a Sabbath? We counted, right? From day 1 and we found this is the Sabbath, and this is the Sabbath, and this is the Sabbath. This is the only one that's the Sabbath that lines up with what we were told in the Gospel of John in relation to John 18 and 19 that we'll cover again in a moment. It's right here. Look at this, the 20th to the 21st, see, at evening. That's the end right here. At evening, that's your end of unleavened bread. Look at that. At evening, the end of the 21st right here, at evening, is your picture of your 7 days of unleavened bread to your 7 years of seals judgments. Well, what do we know about the 7th year? It's a Sabbath. It's a Sabbath year. We've always had it as a Sabbath year. And we just saw how it read as a Sabbath in relation to unleavened bread. So how are we supposed to dispute days as years, years to days, and the fact that it read like a Sabbath? 6 and then the 7th. It lands in the exact same place. And then what happens in Leviticus 23 verse 8, it says, in the 7th day is a holy convocation, you shall do no work. And Exodus 12:16 says it says almost the same thing, right? In the 7th day shall be a holy convocation, no work. But don't forget, then it says what? Except which all must eat, just like it said here. So if we go to Exodus chapter 12, verse 16, we see them both mentioned, right? We covered this in the last one. In the 1st day, holy convocation, and in the 7th day, holy convocation. Well, what would in the 7th day equal? The mid-trib great multitude picture. Literally in the midst of the 7th year, which is what? Exactly what we've been showing from the book of Revelation. In the midst of the 7th year of seals, bam, is the timing of the great multitude rapture. The Gentile great multitude rapture. It's pretty wild. We covered this already, Deuteronomy 16:8, 6 days, and the 7th shall be a solemn assembly. So it's what? It's a solemn assembly on the 7th day, just as it's a picture of the timing of the great multitude rapture. But remember this piece? They also must eat in the 7th day. So we understood the 1st, but now it's a holy convocation, no servile work in the 7th. We know it's a Sabbath, and it's a holy convocation, and that they also must have a meal that they must eat, it says. Well, did you know Exodus 13 gives us even more detail? Watch this in Exodus chapter 13. In Exodus chapter 13, telling us again from the month of Abib, verse 6 of Exodus 13, 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread. Listen to this. And in the 7th day shall be what? A feast to the Lord. Remember what we talked about when we shared this from John 18? They didn't want to go into the judgment hall because they wanted to eat the Passover. And when the world talks about this, they believe that they didn't want to go in the judgment hall because they wanted to eat this Passover, because if you follow John's gospel, you think Jesus is having this meal, he's taken here, and that he's crucified on the 14th and has to be in the grave before here so that they could eat the Passover meal. But if you follow that, you can't believe what Luke, Mark, Matthew say. And that's what we shared in the last one. The only way to understand Luke, Mark, Matthew also in the storyline is to realize that this is a Passover. And that in this Passover is the 7th day of unleavened bread, and in it is a holy convocation. They could do no servile work, and there's a meal that they must eat because it is what? It is also a feast of the Lord. A literal feast of the Lord on the 7th day. What is it the 7th day of? It's the 7th day of Passover, unleavened bread. So when we read this, it threw us off because everybody thinks it's the literal evening of the 14th, as we shared in the last one, but we know it couldn't be. So what really solidifies all of this is when you come to John 19. Okay? The preparation day, because the bodies could not stay on the cross on the Sabbath day, for this Sabbath was a high Sabbath. Well, if we've just proven out when the Sabbaths are, not only in the years, but we can do it to the days, and we know that this seventh day, seventh year is the Sabbath, and it's a holy convocation, it means it's a Sabbath with what? It's not only a Sabbath because of it being a Sabbath, but it's also the seventh day of unleavened bread, which is a holy convocation, which equals then a high Sabbath. There is no possible way of having that happen over here when they're not allowed to do any servile work. I don't know if you guys caught that on the last one. You see, in saying that Jesus is taken here, right? They would call this the day of preparation. No, this is the Sabbath. So what would this be? This would be the day of preparation. There's your Sabbath, and your Sabbath is a high Sabbath because it's also a holy convocation and it's a feast to the Lord. It covers John 18, and it now also, and we showed it last time, it covers John 19. What proves this out to us? What is the thing in this that gives us even more evidence? The years. The days to years, the years to days. So now that would mean Christ resurrected, as we shared, early in the morning on the first day of the week, which would be the 22nd, which brings us back to the alphabet being the beginning and the end. So he resurrects on the 22nd, and when he resurrects on the 22nd, the first day of the week, early in the morning, let's see what this gives us. Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Are you sure you're ready for this one? This is where he's crucified on the day portion, right? He has to be put in the grave, okay? He's crucified during the day. Remember, these squares go from sunrise to sunrise. This is your sunset to sunset. He's crucified, put in the grave, okay? And he resurrects early in the morning on the 22nd, which is the first day of the week. Which means, okay, he's in the grave during the Sabbath, which is a high Sabbath because it's also a holy convocation and a feast to the Lord. And he doesn't resurrect in the evening. He resurrects in the morning, early in the morning, right? The Nisan to Nisan, he resurrects early in the morning on the 22nd day, which is what? The 8th day, right? It's also a picture in relation to days to the 8th day or 22nd day, which is the first day of the week, and he does it early in the morning. Okay? That is what? Resurrection day. Resurrection day, first day of the week in the morning, start of day one, early in the morning, first day of the week at sunrise. Are you ready for this? Do you see it already? You understand why I have it highlighted? Let me zoom in for you. The equivalent in the end of days, in the end of days, oh, come on now. In the end of days 2 years of unleavened bread, to the years of seals, to the understanding with the Sabbaths, to all of the scriptures, and Christ's death in resurrection in 33 AD. Oh, I must have hit something. Shoot. In 33 AD equals what we shared in the last one when Christ. Oh no, I hate when I do that. I don't know what the button is to get out of it. is, remember right here, this line right here, because after the 7th year of seals, we had the 7th seal in chapter 8 of Revelation. Remember that conversation? And they won't start rebuilding until around the spring, the start of the 8th year on the year side, which would be the midst of the first year on the Tishri side. And what year is it? 2033, brothers and sisters. I just showed this count with unleavened bread, days to years, Sabbaths in their place, holy convocations, evenings to days, evenings to evenings, days to days, track them all with the calendar to the end of years, and the resurrection day this year, in account from the fall of 25 and the spring of 26, beginning the 14 years on the day side, equals the picture of Christ's resurrection in 2033. Now, that just might be coincidence. You think so? Do you think that's coincidence after everything we've broken down, not only over the last couple 3 videos, not only since the mirror, but the 2 calendars, the feasts as days to years, and suddenly realizing this time, having worked all this with Tammy, that the first day of the week, early in the morning, is 2033, 2,000 years or 2 days to when they will be there on heavenly Mount Zion, all returned back, ready to rebuild. What are the chances? You see, because if we go back to this chart, oh man, I thought maybe it would only be 1. Okay, you'll remember on this chart, if we go all the way back to the time of Christ, and we track to the 15 years of Tiberius Caesar, we see that we have John's ministry beginning 6 months, lands somewhere about in here, about 6 months before Jesus gets baptized. Both of these things from Luke chapter 3 and Luke chapter 3, in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, John begins his ministry and Jesus is baptized. Both are in the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, based on the history records of when he began his rule, which is in the September of 14, if I remember correctly, September 17th of 14 AD. And we're told in Luke chapter 3 that the 15th year of Tiberius Caesar, being a Tishri to Tishri, is his 15th year, and John began his ministry 6 months before Christ was baptized. We followed these things through, brothers and sisters. We followed these things through. We followed the Sabbaths to the Jubilees, from Christ's decree to the time of the death and resurrection of Christ in 33 AD. And here we are, looking at 2,000 years later, to the prophetic timing of days and years to days, and we get the picture of the resurrection called the cross, the beginning and the end, 2033. I told you there'd be new things pointing in this one, didn't I? That's what, 3 or 4 new things confirming the timing, the understanding, the days to years, the years to days. I am more convinced after this that we have understood the Sabbaths and the Passover of the first day of unleavened bread during the week of Passover, to the crucifixion, to the Sabbath being the high holy Sabbath, and the meal being eaten as that Passover meal is this feast to the Lord on the last day of Passover and the resurrection from the cross, the 22nd, the first day of the week, the beginning. I think it gets pretty clear, don't you? I think it's pretty darn well laid out for us, guys. I think most of you probably agree at this point. You see, here's that. We shared it last time, right? A high Sabbath is any Sabbath that marks a major festival or feast day. Okay? That's exactly what we're showing. None of these things are things that we made up. These are all things tracked. These are literal events of things being tracked in Scripture, in history, in years, in days, in two beginnings of years, and the Spirit leading us through the whole thing. So this was the days of years for the unleavened bread and Passover that begins, I believe, that we would see something this year, Tishri, around September 25th. What exactly? I don't know, but it would be something significant that would have people looking up saying, what is that? Okay? And 50 days before Nisan, all of this beginning with the pre-trib. It's all here in order, guys. It's all there. So now what happens if we go to the easier one, because there's not as many details and not necessary for as many details, when we go to the book, the Feast of Tabernacles, okay? We're going to go to the Feast of Tabernacles, which, as you guys know, let's go to the Feast of Tabernacles. Feast of Tabernacles is no different. I'm going to prove again that this is the Sabbath from the 13th to the 14th, and that the 20th to the 21st is also a Sabbath, which again, in my opinion, in the revelation of everything we've shown, that if all of these prophecies, if all of these things being revealed in the prophetic have continuously brought clarity from to the was and the is because of the revelations of prophecy, then why is this one any different? This, to me, as we're going to see in the story of Tabernacles, is more evidence again that the Sabbaths restart at every new day, every new month, not new day, at every new beginning of the month. And this is going to be the evidence of it. The years to days. That's the evidence. And we're going to see it crystal clear in relation to the end of days. So there's your Sabbath, and there's your Sabbath. There's your first day of Tabernacles. There's your second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth day of Tabernacles. And lo and behold, what's the eighth day called? New beginning. The eighth day is called the new beginning. What's the Jubilee called? The new beginning. Both of them represent an eighth day, right? It's all represented as the eighth day after a 7, or the 50th after what? 7 times 7, right? The 50th. That's what it's always represented as. So look what happens. We come to Numbers 29, and we'll go to the new chart, okay? So we're going to see this in Leviticus. I didn't add Numbers 29, but it's the same thing, the same type of wording. In Leviticus 23:39, on the first day, a holy convocation, and you're going to see something called a Sabbath. What? Wait a second. Okay? So what is this day, first of all? This is our Sabbath day year, okay? This one right here is our Sabbath day year from, let me go up higher. Is our Sabbath day year from right here, okay? This is the 7th, this is the 8th, okay? This is what we're continuing. 8th, 9th, 10th. So this was our Sabbath from unleavened bread. Okay, that's our Sabbath. And you can see over here, we put it on this side. There's the day portion. There's the evening portion, right? So there's your sunrise to sunrise to sunrise, because we're on the Nissan side, the day side. And you can see if you track it right here, there's your Sabbath from evening to evening. Okay? That's your Sabbath. The 6th day to the 7th day. When you track it up higher, you're going to see the same thing. Evening to evening, okay? Splitting a day, going from the Sabbath right here, from evening to evening, being the 13th to the 14th. The years are proving it out just as days. But I want you to see something. The only reason this box was put down here is just because of room. Okay? So all you got to do is follow the arrow, and you see it's pointing to the timing of the start of Tabernacles. And what does it say? Well, if we go to Numbers 29, we'll go back to Leviticus in a second, but Numbers 29 tells us what? In verse 12, it says, "And on the 15th day of the 7th month, you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work." Okay? So what's that saying? On the 15th day, okay, is the first day, and you're going to do no servile work. It is a feast, I think it was, to the Lord, right? It's a feast unto the Lord, and you'll do no servile work. Watch what happens. 2nd day, 3rd day. We're not covering, of course, all the sacrifices and everything that takes place, okay? We're focusing on the events that they do outside of the sacrifices. 6th day, 7th day, and then what? On the 8th day is the solemn assembly, and you shall do no servile work therein. So, where's the solemn assembly? On the 8th day, and they're going to do no servile work therein, but it's a solemn assembly. That's the 8th day. Okay? So it went from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's the 8th. So the 8th day is a solemn assembly, and they'll do no work. So we had the Sabbath from the end of the 7 years of seals, right? The 7th year of the 7th day as the 7th year for unleavened bread. And now we get to Tabernacles, the first day of Tabernacles, okay? The new set of 7 years. But remember what happened? The resurrection was connected to after the evening. It was early in the morning on the first day of the week, right? Early in the morning on the first day of the week. And if we take this now forward, and here we are now talking about Tabernacles, look what it tells us about Tabernacles. We just saw that in Numbers 29, it told us day 1, on the day, so from the start of the day, we have a solemn assembly. A solemn assembly and doing no servile work. Well, it just so happens that there was no servile work, and it's not until the Lord shows up. When they're reestablished and the real 8th year is beginning. You tracking what I'm saying? But then we're going to go a little bit further up, and we're going to see what it says about the 8th day. The 8th day, 8th year, is the 15th, okay? In the picture of what we're talking about, or here it is, the 8th day, right? The Jubilee is the 8th day, like a new beginning. And what does it say? In the rest of Leviticus 23:39, it says, on the 8th day is a holy convocation, a solemn assembly, and a Sabbath. So we've got the solemn assembly that's added, and we've also got a holy convocation and a Sabbath here, but no solemn assembly. Why do we have a solemn assembly in the 8th day right here of the new beginning? Well, if you remember what happens when they're all brought back from the wilderness at the end of 14 years, in the midst of the Jubilee, after the Lord replenished the earth with the water that will flow from the temple to begin the Jubilee year, they all come back in the Jubilee. Okay? So you have this on the 8th day in this 15th or in this 8th day of Tabernacles, okay, as the 7th day or as the 8th day of the week, here they are. It's not only a holy convocation, it's a solemn assembly. What is the solemn assembly? Well, those who flew away on the wings of an eagle are now going to be gathered back. They're now going to be gathered back, and this is Ezekiel 48, sorry, when they will all be given their portions of land. It's a solemn assembly on the 8th day, just as there was a solemn assembly on the 7th day. Remember what it said? It was 6 days, sorry, and the 7th day is a solemn assembly, and it equaled the time of what? It was like a picture of the timing of the great multitude in the midst of the 7th year. Here we are showing the same thing, and it's telling us there's a solemn assembly in the 8th year, and that 8th year is when they would be coming back from having been in the wilderness until all the tribulation was over and the Lord replenished the earth. Funny how they all tell us these little hints that you've got the pre, the mid, the post in the story of Unleavened Bread and Tabernacles. Pretty wild. But you're going to notice something that maybe started to throw you off. Maybe started asking some questions. Because in Numbers 29, it's pretty straightforward. 15th day, holy convocation, no servile work. On the 8th day, solemn assembly, no servile work. We know what this now represents is them coming back from the wilderness where they were. And it's the exact picture that we've shown over the last while, which is connected to, which is connected right here to the Jubilee, Leviticus 25:13. In the year of this Jubilee, every man will be returned, and they'll all start receiving their portion. This is what? This is the 8th day of Tabernacles, the solemn assembly. Guys, these are exact pictures. This is why I was saying for so long, for a few years now, or I guess a couple of years or so, that Deuteronomy is the revelation of the picture of the end of days. But we had never gone into the details of the events of how they're explained, of the things they need to do outside of the sacrifices. But now there's a very, very important piece in all of this. And that's this right here. When we get to Leviticus, oh, I must have clicked something. Let me try this. Oh, I did it everywhere. I don't know what I did. I'll figure it out later. In Leviticus chapter 23, you guys will remember, you guys will see this, and you're instantly going to start asking questions like, uh-oh, wait a second. Does this throw it all off? Of course it does, and I'm sharing you the understanding, right? You're going to see it for yourselves. In Leviticus 23, verse 39, okay? We're going to see what this says, because remember what it says? On the first day shall be a holy convocation and a Sabbath. And it says on the 8th day is going to be a holy convocation, a solemn assembly, and a Sabbath. But wait a second. How could it be a Sabbath if the Sabbath was the year before? Remember, the Sabbath is going to be the year / the day before. This is the Sabbath. Yet, in the first day of Tabernacles, it calls it a holy convocation and a Sabbath. And then over here, this is where the 7th day Sabbath would be. And this would be the 8th day. And the 8th day is called a holy convocation, also no servile work. It's called a solemn assembly. And it's also called a Sabbath. But, how could that be? Did you not understand, Alan, that these are Sabbaths? If these are the true Sabbaths, 6 to 7, 13 to 14, 20 to 21, 27 to 28, if these are the true Sabbaths reset at the start of every month, then how is the first day a Sabbath And how is the 8th day a Sabbath? Well, when I first saw that, I scratched my head too. And as I was pondering it, as I was considering it, I'm praying over it, it dawned on me. And what dawned on me is something that has happened more than once. And you guys will get it right away. Leviticus 23:39. Also, in the 15th day of the 7th month, when you have gathered in the fruit of the land, you shall keep a feast unto the Lord 7 days. On the first day shall be a Sabbath, and on the 8th day shall be a Sabbath. And you know what dawned on me? I came back, it was less than an hour later, and I was doing something, grabbing a bite to eat or something, and I just went, bing! I knew what it was, and I went to look at it, and sure enough, thank the Lord, it was correct. Because if it wasn't, there wouldn't be this teaching tonight, and I wouldn't have understood what the Sabbaths really were. You want to see what they are? This isn't your normal Sabbath, brothers and sisters. Check it out. This is a Sabbath that only happens on special days. It is a special holiday Sabbath. It is not your weekly Sabbath. You guys will remember this, right? It's not your weekly Sabbath. I don't know why the wording's all different now. Shoot. Anyways, okay? It's a special holiday Sabbath. It is not the same word for Sabbath. Let's go up here. Let's go to the Sabbath. Look at what the Sabbath is. This Sabbath is used as the regular weekly Sabbath 111 times. The other Sabbath is only used 11 times, brothers and sisters. What is that Sabbath? This Sabbath is the first and last day of Tabernacles. It could be if one to trumpets and atonement. It is a special type of Sabbath and is not connected. It is not telling you it is the weekly Sabbath. It is a special standalone Sabbath, which means you have your 7th day Sabbath from the last year of seals, and then you have a special Sabbath on the first day. And watch what happens here. This is what? The 14th year and the Jubilee, as we've shared from the previous ones. We know it now well. Okay? Watch what happens. This is what has this always been to us? The 14th year or the 21st year in the big picture, right? This is the 14th year on the sowing and reaping side, and this is the Jubilee, which is called the new beginning or the 8th day that we show for Tabernacles. If the 7th year of trumpets is the Sabbath, then as we've shown in all of these things tonight, wouldn't the 7th day of Tabernacles be the Sabbath? Of course it is. Of course it's a Sabbath. You understand? This is still a Sabbath. Remember Tabernacles, the 7th to the 8th day, is a picture of the 7 years of trumpets and the final Jubilee as a picture of the 8th day. If the 7th year of Tabernacles is a picture of the Sabbath year of rest, is then a picture of the 7th day Sabbath of Tabernacles, and the 8th day is a picture of the Jubilee, and in the 8th day, what is it? No servile work. It's a special day Sabbath after what? After a Sabbath? That's right. So what do you get? You end up with 2 days or 2 years like no sowing and no reaping and no work. That's exactly right, isn't it? Remember what we heard? Remember what the teaching showed us about Leviticus? After the 49, and you get to the 50th year, and you proclaim a Jubilee, And they'll say, what shall we eat the 7th year? And I will bless it 3 years of increase. Remember that? In the 6th year, I will bring an abundance in your reaping. I will bring a blessing from that sowing. I will bring a blessing of reaping for 1, 2, 3 years you're going to be provided for. Because there's no sowing, no reaping, because it's a Sabbath year of rest. The Jubilee is a no sowing, no reaping as a special Sabbath year of rest. And that's why there's a blessing at the end of the 3rd or in the 6th for 3 years. So that they could sow after the Jubilee year and then reap later to the end of that year. Did you catch it? It's the same thing with the Days of Tabernacles. It's the exact same thing to the Days of Tabernacles. It's the 7th day is a Sabbath, just like the 14th year of tribulation is the Sabbath year, and the 8th day, as we've shown in the story from Deuteronomy, is the 8th day with Leviticus 23. The 8th day of Tabernacles has always been, over all of these years, the picture of the Jubilee. So what do you get? 1, 2 years of no sowing and no reaping in the years that are equivalent to what? The days of no sowing and no reaping for the Jubilee year and for the 14th year Sabbath. It's an exact picture, brothers and sisters. It's an exact copy. It's like literally playing out, copying and pasting. And I tried, even though there's a lot of stuff, I tried to make it as straightforward to understand as possible. That if you copied and pasted what takes place during unleavened bread and copied and pasted what takes place during the 7 to the 8 days of Tabernacles, and you put them over the understanding of the revelation of the end of days of the 14 years from a sowing and reaping side and a year side, or a sunrise to sunrise to a sunset to sunset side, and the new beginning 8th day of Tabernacles as Jubilee, you end up getting a copy overlaid on top of each other of the end of days as the years of Deuteronomy's unleavened bread to Tabernacles. It's a mirror image. How fitting, right? The days to years of these feasts are a mirror image in our mirror teaching of 2 years playing out simultaneously, years as days to feasts and Sabbaths to the end of days. You see, this is the note I put here, applying to both of these feast weeks. The 8th day of Tabernacles is called the new beginning and is also the first day of the week. That was what I was harping on in the beginning. How did it not dawn on me after all this time? The 7 years of trumpets ends with a Jubilee, which is also called a new beginning. So then, just as the 7th year is a Sabbath year, so too is the 7th day of Tabernacles in the days as years, proving Sabbaths restart at new moons, as shown in the week of unleavened bread and the week of Tabernacles to the 8th day as the Jubilee. And that Sabbaths in both cases here on the days side, as we showed here, are from the 13th evening to the 14th evening. Days are as years. See that? 6th to the 7th, 13th to the 14th, literally mirroring our end of days, years of Sabbaths to the days, whether it be a tabernacles, whether it be a feast of unleavened bread Passover count, or whether it be a 7 days to the 8th day of tabernacles count. So with that, I am convinced, to all of the revelation, to the best of my knowledge of everything that has led us here, and specifically since last fall with the mirror and this calendar system, that the new year, the new month begins the new count of the Sabbaths. And the revelation of it is revealed in the count to the end of years within those feasts as mirror images, days to years. It's like, what do we know happens in this final year? You know what's really always been interesting about this, right? As you guys know, and as we read, the 14th year, though it's a Sabbath, doesn't play out like a solemn assembly Sabbath in a typical 7th year. Only in Tabernacles. Just like the 14th year of the end of days. Is it a literal year of rest? Or is it the final year of the Lord's judgment? This 14th year is the final year of the Lord's judgment. He returns feet down on the Mount of Olives to start the 14th year. And when he returns feet down, excuse me, and brings judgment in that final year, it's not a year of rest. It's the year of judgment. It's the and what is it called, by the way? It's called the day. Remember that? Remember what it's called from Luke chapter 4, which is a picture of the return of the Lord that starts with the 40 days of the days of Noah, a prophetic typology of the 40 days of Noah. That starts the 14th year at the Lord's return, feet down in Luke chapter 4 from Luke in order. All right? And he talks about then at the end of it that he declares the Jubilee, and he declares the Jubilee at the end of it, which is a picture of the declaration from Isaiah 61. And you'll recall that Isaiah 61 uses the same wording we've been using all night, just as the title. To proclaim the acceptable year, okay? To proclaim the acceptable year of the Lord and the day of his vengeance. Because why? The days are years, brothers and sisters. They are images. They are mirror images of each other. And you could see it revealed again right here in this 7th day of unleavened bread, which is, of tabernacles, which is the picture of the 14th year of tribulation. And this is when the Lord returns feet down and brings that day as year judgment upon the enemies, all of his enemies at this point, which is exactly the picture we get from Matthew chapter 24 in his discourse at the coming of the Son of Man. This is his return feet down on the Mount of Olives right here to begin the final 14th year, or the 7th year of trumpet judgments, or the 7th day of tabernacles, which you've noticed yourself. The 7th day of tabernacles is not a Sabbath, is not a Sabbath nor a feast day, because he's running right through it in that final 14th year or 7th day of tabernacles. He's running right through it with his day to year judgment. And it's Matthew 24 when he comes at the day an hour no one knows. It's going to be as it was, excuse me, in the days of Noah, and as it was in the days of Noah begins with 40 days and 40 nights, like the 40 days of Luke chapter 4. And as you know, it was the second month, 17th day, which is a prophetic picture from Matthew 4, the day and hour no one knows, being the Feast of Trumpets. And it goes to what? 1 year and 10 days in Genesis chapter 8, when it comes to the point of the second month, 17th day of the month, proving that the final 49th year, or the 7th year of trumpet judgments, the 7th day of tabernacles, the 14th year of tribulation, the day as year to the Lord in the final judgment, as it was in the days of Noah, when he brings judgment upon them all, is going to be 1 year and 10 days long, exactly as Leviticus told us it was, when Leviticus 25 said that the Jubilee sounding of the trumpet will be proclaimed on the feast of, on the Day of Atonement, which makes it from the Feast of Trumpets to the Day of Atonement, Feast of Trumpets to Day of Atonement, 1 year and 10 days in the final year of the days of Noah. And then what's proclaimed is the Jubilee, the sounding of the shofar on the Day of Atonement, brothers and sisters. It is all, oh, I must have fixed it. It is all a mirror image. Do you get that? It is all a carbon copy of days to years, and to seal it by the Lord himself. He told us through the revelation of Luke in order that in Luke chapter 4, the decree was made that began as the 40 days of Noah. That would be the final year, and it would end with him proclaiming the Jubilee at the end of the year and 10 days. And what did he say in Isaiah 61? A day as a year. In the exact same spot it happens in the mirror. In the days to years. Brothers and sisters, I hope and pray that wasn't too much to follow. I'm going to put this chart and the other one. I'm going to put both of these, the Passover one and the Tabernacle ones, in links in the description box under this video. You'll notice this one has the specific days from evening to evening. This one has them from day to day, going all the way, just to help you out. I didn't do it over here, but you can just track it the exact same way, or just track them counting these days as days right here, these years as days. You can do the same thing. Okay. We also have another one right here that Tammy was able to get put together to me just shortly before starting the teaching. And right here, you could see it. We've combined them both together. So in fact, I think what I might do is just put this one in there for you guys, so you could have it on one piece, maybe print it out on 2 pages if you want it printed, or at the very least you can download it and track these things I was talking about for yourselves. It's wild, guys. It's so wild. You know, as I said, I know I'm repeating myself, but as I said, when it came to Deuteronomy 16 and understanding and showing in a just a basic view the picture that it laid out, we have all, as far as I know, been in agreement in the unequivocal revelation of unleavened bread to tabernacles in what Deuteronomy told us. Now we've gone into the details of how those days play out. And in each of them, show us that there is a seventh day, 6th to the 7th, Sabbath and Sabbath. And that the final one is a Sabbath followed by a Sabbath of Holy Convocation, just as the Jubilee would be, days mirroring years. I'm convinced that it is now understood that these are the Sabbaths. This is the Passover. The evening of the 14th only is the Lord's portion of the Passover. And this is the beginning also of the first day of unleavened bread. And it takes us to the 7th day of unleavened bread at evening right here. And this Sabbath is the only one where the continuation of the story into John, from the sop to them eating the Sabbath, and then this being what? A holy convocation. So if he ate it, which he did, and this is a holy convocation, they couldn't have come to get him here either, because it was a no-work Sabbath day. It does not line up. Only this lines up, because this is a Sabbath. It is a high Sabbath, because this is a holy convocation, making it a Sabbath and a high Sabbath, aligning everything within the Gospels to the law according to the Passover. And as we carried it all forward into the next set of 7, to the story of Tabernacles, it revealed the same carbon copy. Sabbath to the 8th day, Jubilee, Sabbath year, Sabbath day, new beginning, 8th day, and new beginning, Jubilee, as a new beginning, 8th day, Sabbath of rest, Sabbath of rest. I am more convinced now than I was even after the first teaching back at this one here, Passover, must watch. I was more convinced when I got to the unleavened bread of the end of days, and now with more detail to the unleavened bread Passover week of unleavened day, of end of days, I'm even more convinced than I was from the previous two. And now, by adding the understanding of Tabernacles, I'm even beyond convinced. I believe we've understood the Sabbaths. I believe we've understood the Passover and the Tabernacles, because we can prove them out to the revelation of the end of days. And so what confirmed these things? The exact same process as every other revelation we've had. It is the revelation of the end of days that proves out the understanding from the was and the is, as we have done numerous times over the past several years. The revelation of the end proves and confirms understanding from the was and the is. And it has just happened here again tonight. So, brothers and sisters, I pray it blesses you. I pray it strengthens you. I pray you take the time. I know that it's detailed. I know there's a lot to look through, but if you just read the chart, follow the arrows to where they're pointing, go to the scriptures that are explaining it to you. If you need to, track it with the last 2 teachings. It is all there, brothers and sisters. The days are copies of the years, and the years proved the days. I love you. God bless you. God bless your families. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.